Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar presented by ReQlogic. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. A couple of housekeeping items we would like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can either raise your hand so that we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We'll answer questions throughout the presentation and also follow up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. Today's speaker, we have Sue Hilko from ReQlogic. So at this point, Sue, I believe we're ready to transition over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Lindsay. Appreciate it. Well, thanks everybody for taking time out of your day today. I'm going to talk a little bit about common issues that I have discussed with people and experienced as I talk to them about their business requirements and their needs, and then things that you should really think about when you're thinking about automating or changing your system for purchasing or e-procurement. And then I'll show you a little bit of the product dispersed throughout, so to give you some examples of how it works within our product. So with that said, I'll get started. And common issues. So what are some of the common issues? Well, that depends on whether people are on a paper-based system or people have inefficient procurement systems, whether that's part of your Dynamics GP, you just don't feel that it's working sufficiently for you, or you've tried another system. Some people have homegrown systems. So when it's paper-based, of course, the biggest complaint is, where are the documents? Who has them for approval? Oh, that same person, every company has one, has them in his inbox, and they're sitting there, and I shouldn't say he, I guess he or she is holding on to them and not approving them. What's the result of that? You're having late payments, possibly. You're missing, taking advantage of discounts, and you have erratic purchasing. So you may have people just purchasing without a requisition or purchasing from a vendor that isn't set up. So you have a lot of disruption to your system. If you have an inefficient system, sometimes you have many times you have limited workflow capability. Just doesn't match the approval process that you need. No mobile access. Today, in today's worlds, with people traveling and out of the office and how mobile we've become, that becomes more and more important. And what if you have a current system that doesn't integrate to Dynamics GP? That's another issue, because then you're doing double entry, you're wasting time, and you're often, if there is a synchronization, you always have to worry, are the two systems in sync? And limited or no audit trail into visibility as to where it is in the process, what's happening next. So with that, goals that you should think about when you're thinking about a new system is, number one, review your business processes. Are they effective today? Could you improve them? How could you improve them? And Socius can help you with that, sitting down with you and taking a look at your business process. Match the new procurement system to your business requirements. If you have requirements and a new software product doesn't meet those requirements, is it really going to be the best solution for you? So you want to meet those requirements by potentially adapting entry screens so you make it easier for people to use. Many times companies will purchase a system and then the users are fighting utilizing that new system. So you want to ease that transition as much as possible, and the more adaptable and easier you can make it for them to use, the better for you. So, and are you getting the information you need to make the right decision? So are you getting, are they flowing, documents flowing through the system in a timely manner so that you can take advantage of discounts, maybe consolidate purchases so you can get volume discounts from your vendor? And how can you become more efficient? Are you purchasing from the right vendors, or are people going off and just purchasing from their cousin or whomever they're friends with? And are you taking advantage of those discounts, as I mentioned? So how can you address these issues and more? We're going to take a look at that today. So ReQlogic, we're going to talk about actually these 4 bullets today, and I'll take each one of these at a time independently. So implementing cost control. So in the system, I hear it many times that people say, I get an invoice for something and I don't even know what it is, because even though your process says you must start with a requisition, if you don't have an automated system, then people have a tendency to just go purchase it. Then the invoice comes in and accounting says, what the heck is this invoice for? So you can implement the system that every purchase must have a requisition, but an automated process will help to ensure that that business process is followed. So approval is required before that purchase is made, before the PO is created. So when you get the invoice, you have something to match it to. Provide standard lists of items. So because of the real-time integration of ReQlogic into Dynamics GP, we can read the GP inventory table if you're utilizing that. If not, we have our own table of items that you can set up. You can go out to websites. So if today you're currently purchasing medical supplies from a medical supplier, or office supplies from an office supplier, you can go out to those sites. It's called Punch Out. You can fill your little shopping cart just as you do today, only instead of paying for those, you can automatically create a requisition. So, and this will help you to standardize what items are available for the people to purchase, so they're not going off and buying anything that they want from somewhere else. Committed actual to budget. So the ability to be able to see your budget when you're actually approving that requisition and where you stand in comparison to that budget is a big plus. So you can also then tie to that a warning if you're over budget, or you can make it they can't purchase if it's over budget. So you can adapt your routing that if it is over budget, it has to go to someone else for approval. Either the budget needs to be adjusted, or that item can't be purchased until next year's budget. And those are some choices that you would make when you were setting it up. You can also we do have expense capability. You can limit them by putting a cap on meals. So if you have a per diem, or if you have a meal limit, such as $50 for dinner, or you have an entertainment limit that they can spend, you can set up those items in the ReQlogic catalog. So all of this is implementing your cost control. So with that, I'm going to go over to the ReQlogic product, and we'll take a look at that, and we'll open up a requisition. Excuse me. So I'm logging in to I have logged into ReQlogic, and I have previously created a requisition right here. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we talked about. So down here, I've created 2 line items. So if you note here, there's a budget symbol, and that budget inquiry is a drill down. Now, if you're using projects from GP or a third-party add-on, this is drilling actually into the GP budget. You can also view the GL budget from GP, and it will give you the actual amount, the committed, the total amount. Now, important here is this committed amount, because that is not visible from within GP. So some companies have large requisitions in process, and in GP, you don't know that they're already committed. They may be committed against the budget because they don't show up until they're an actual purchase order and it has been paid as hitting your budget. So from ReQlogic, you do have the capability. So you're going to look at what's in progress. So therefore, it could alert you that you may be over budget earlier in this case. You also see here on this line, if I edit this line, these are my lookup windows. So I have a drill down into the GP items or the ReQlogic catalog. I also have the capability to only see my favorite items. So this is by user. So if I open the whole inventory lookup, you'll see these green ones are ones that I have designated as my favorites. And to add one, I'm just clicking the star. So the benefit of that is that user adaptability that I talked about. You want to make it as efficient for each user and easy to use so that they're going to adapt to the system easier. So that's a couple of things that we talked about, and now we'll go back and we'll address the next bullet point from within our PowerPoint presentation. So we're on to the next slide, which talks about making smarter purchases. So we're consolidating multiple requisitions for the same vendor to one purchase order. So what's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is that you can take advantage of multiple volume discounts. So you want to group those together. So many companies today are diversified throughout North America, or in some cases the world, and people are putting in requisitions. Well, if you can group them together by vendor, then you have the ability to take advantage of that. People are implementing pricing contracts, and these could be either for subcontractors or contractors that are providing services for you, or they might be purchases of items. So the way a blanket requisition works, I'm sure you're familiar with it, those of you. The way it's handled in ReQlogic is the blanket requisition is created. It can go through an approval process if you'd like, or you can go through an approval process as you draw down from that blanket. So this is another way of restricting people from purchasing certain items at certain prices. So if a blanket's out there and someone enters a requisition to the same vendor for the same item, you may set it up to auto assign to that blanket. So it will automatically go out, recognize the vendor, recognize the item, and fill in the proper price according to the contract that you have negotiated, whether that be for services or for an item. So the punch-out capability, I mentioned this on the last screen. So this would, many times when you're going out to this office supplier, will say, you don't want to see their whole site. You only want to see a portion of that site maybe, and maybe you have select items that you buy, and maybe you've negotiated special pricing on these. So you can go out to that website and see the special pricing, the select items. And again, you're making smarter purchases because you're restricting those requesters to selecting the items at the prices that you've negotiated. And of course, I always say a lot of systems collect information and adapt in certain ways, but what is the big benefit that we need? We need to get at the information in the format that we need to help us make smarter decisions. So can you get the information out of your system to do your spend analysis? And on that, ReQlogic provides our reports in both a what we call a format form that allows you to drill back into ReQlogic, or in an Excel format, which of course will allow you to totally manipulate the data, build your pivot tables if you so desire. So with that, I'll leave this one more time and go back into ReQlogic. So we talked about punch out. So I have this requisition here that I've created 2 lines. So now I'm going to add a 3rd line here, and here's my little shopping cart. So I'm clicking my shopping cart, and in my demo system, I'm going out to CDW. So I'm going to go right on to a special connection to, and we have done this to over 200 different vendors. So if the vendor you are dealing with is HTML capable, then chances are you can connect to them this way. So I'm going to say I'm looking to buy a laptop case. So just like you shop on any other website that we shop on today, it will feed you back items that are applicable. So let's say that I need 4 of these laptop cases, and I'm going to add them to my cart. Now let's say I also want to buy a Microsoft Surface. So I'm going to go out, I'm going to search on that. It's going to feed me back some Surface Pros, and I'll buy 2 of those. Now you're going to keep shopping until you have everything in your cart, of course, that you want to purchase. But instead of giving them your credit card and buying it, you're going to check out. And when you check out, you're transferring that shopping cart. And you'll note that when we're back in ReQlogic, I now have 2 additional lines on this requisition that I've already started. Well, what's the benefit of this? It's the everything is here. So my vendors here, the vendor's part numbers here, I have defaulted in a GL account based on this item here to eliminate a lot of correction entries as it moves forward, the price off the website. So you're ensuring that you're purchasing at the price you negotiated and building that conformity. So there, I'll save this line, and I need to add a required by date, which I'll do, and save this line. And then I'll go into the last line here and save this line and add that required by date and save this line as well. And then my requisition is ready. So we took a look at the budget review, and we talked a little bit about blanket. Here's where the blanket is available on a requisition, and I can did I close this line? Yes. Now, since it's already been started, I cannot make this a blanket, but this would be the box that I would check to make this a blanket, and then it will give me a little pop-up that asks me for the expiration date. So let's go back now and talk about our next bullet. So our next bullet talks about limiting Maverick spending. Well, we've already addressed a couple of ways to do that, but you can also limit which vendors they can select. And you can do this through user-defined fields or through restriction. We do have 2 restrictions available. You can do it by permitting them access to certain vendor classes. So there's a number of ways to do that. And most importantly, you want to implement strict approver routing rules. So you want the flexibility that people can approve it who need to see it. So for instance, my IT items that I purchased from the CDW site, I can add, and I have a line in my demo system that says, if the item class ID has the letters IT in it, then add William Kane as an approver, because William Kane is the IT manager. He owns the budget for IT purchases, and he wants to approve anytime an IT item is purchased, regardless of who purchases it. So if your business process is not that IT needs to purchase all IT purchases, but that anyone in your organization can request, then that at least alerts William that an IT purchase has been made if it's going to hit his budget. You can also restrict on a GL code. So for instance, sometimes someone will purchase a fixed asset. Well, a fixed asset often needs a different level of approval or a different type of approval. So you can limit, if a GL code is a specific code and identified as a fixed asset, that it will route to finance differently or a different level of approval. Now, most systems do dollar level approval, so that's pretty basic. Our approval actually routing is very, very strong to allow you to all that additional functionality in addition to the dollar approval process. So you can set up the system if so desired. We tried to make it as adaptable as possible in that you can modify screens. So you can add fields, up to 24 fields. You can remove fields, hide them. You can make them read only. You can make them required, additional fields that aren't required out of the box. And you can limit. So what that means is, when we go back in, I'll show you on the requisition screen, only 3 fields were highlighted in blue on the line entry screen, and those were my required fields. And I've set up a special person. So again, user adaptability. I want to make it as simple as possible. So if your policy is you don't want the user to pick the vendor, you don't want the user to even see the GL code, all you want them to do is put in a description of what they want, tell you when they want it and how many they want. And then you let it flow through the approval process, and at that time, additional things can be added. A manager can decide what GL code it should be distributed to, or you can leave that to the very end and let purchasing decide who they're going to buy it from and fill in those other required fields that you would need in order to create a purchase order. So you're creating those unique screens, as I mentioned, and limiting capability to go into those screens. So let's take a look at some of the things we talked about here. So we'll go back to ReQlogic. And if I log out as Rex Baker, who I'm logged in as today, as indicated in the upper left corner, and I log in as Jay Smith, this is the guy I set up as having limited access. So if we take a look at his entry screen down here, you'll see that his entry screen looks totally different than Rex's entry screen. So for instance, I have those 3 fields I talked about. All he needs to do is tell me what he wants, tell me when he wants it, and tell me how many he wants. And that's it. And then he can submit this for approval, and it can flow through the process. So I have 3 required fields. So if I log out now as John, and I log back in as Rex, who I was logged in as before, and I open up Rex's screen again, you'll see that when I edit one of his fields or his lines, he has many, many, many more fields. So he can see the item number. He can see the GL code. He still only has 3 required fields. I could make, if your company utilized project and cost categories, you could make these required or a vendor required if you wanted to. But these are the fields that are standard required out of the box. Now note here, I have, this is one of my 24 custom fields that I can add to the product. So what's the benefit of these custom fields, or what are some of the benefits? Well, they can be used for routing and approval. So you can route based upon a custom field. They can be used for reporting purposes. So you can utilize them for that. You can tie budgets to a user-defined field, budgets within ReQlogic. So if you were tracking, if you weren't using projects and you were tracking a contract, or some companies have events that they would like to track their expenses or their purchases against, then you could utilize a custom field for that. So here's a custom field I recently put in the system for contracts. This particular company was wanted to track their purchases against a contract. So this is called a dimension field. I added the field to the screen, and I built a table of their various contracts behind this. So all they need to do is go and select the contract that's applicable to this line and save it. Now, I said these are custom fields, but they're not custom fields. I always say, to me, custom means cha-ching or additional money. So these are custom fields, but they're not cha-ching. They can be done by you, or they can be, associates can assist you in the implementation and deciding how you would utilize these and train you to set these up yourself. So if I save this line here and I go up to the top, you'll notice here I have changed it to call it configurations, because anything in this area here is out of the box configuration. So that means you can modify this system and you don't have to modify any code behind it. You're basically modifying how it looks. So what does that mean? That means under data field customization is where I decide what fields do I want to make required? What fields do I want this user to see? And your configurations are by user, by group, or globally across the system. So you have a number of options. Underneath your view definitions, anywhere you see a gray bar, such as this, or on the home page, such as this, you can modify these gray bars. So you can add fields, columns of information to them to allow you to sort. You can see you can sort on each of these fields in a different manner. So if I want to see, the other day I had a company who had inventory by location or site, and their multi-sites or company weren't set up as separate databases. They were defined by GL code. So I could then add to this lookup window the GL code, and they would be able to sort or search on the GL code. So right now my lookup is by item, by description, by vendor, by catalog, which is everything listed against the gray bar. So there's a lot of flexibility available to you, and as I mentioned in the beginning, you want that flexibility so that you're adapting any system to your business processes, and you're not forced to adapt your business processes to the software product. So we talked about John's different visibility, and we talked a little bit about routing, and I won't go into complete detail on that because the routing is very sophisticated, but I'll open up one of the routing policies. Now when I search here, you'll see I have unlimited routing policies. So you normally have a different routing policy for expenses, excuse me, for invoices, and for credit memos maybe, and you can have different types of routing just for a requisition. So I have several different types here set up. This is the one that I'm using in my demo requisition, and this is basically how it's set up. So it's routing to a manager. I can route, I can send an FYI instead of putting them on the approval. This was the IT example I talked about, going to William Kane and then to his manager if it's over 5,000 and so on. So you have a lot of flexibility in your routing policies. So let's go back now and talk about our last bullet point. So our final bullet point talks about increasing efficiency. So how are some of the ways to increase efficiency? Well, one thing you want to avoid at all costs is double entry. So many times, if it's paper, of course, then once it gets approved, it has to be manually entered into GP. If it's a current system that's not integrated, then we're entering into two systems, or we're synchronizing. So you want, at maximum, you want real-time integration. So you want to write and read to your ERP or GP tables so that you don't have to worry about, are they in sync? Am I double entering? You want no lost papers. So if today you're emailing back and forth and you would like the ability to attach an unlimited number of documents to that requisition, or you want a copy of the invoice attached to the invoice, so when the approvers are approving it, they have everything available to them. And when it gets sent over to GP, it has those documents attached for viewing as well. You want full visibility into the audit trail. Where is it in the approval process? So you want to reduce those phone calls back and forth, or those hundreds of emails that we get every day saying, where is this? Did you approve this? Where is it in the status? So you want that visibility. You want that routing process to be automatic. Whatever your business process is, your rules are, you want that to be automatic to route through the system. You want it to send email notifications, letting people know that they have documents waiting for their approval. You want it to remind them that those documents are still in there for approval. You want to make it flexible enough to allow them to reroute it if they're out of the office and unavailable to route it, and sort of an automatic rerouting for a period of time they'll be out the office. You want to make this as efficient as possible. You can do that through templates. As I showed you, John's entry screen looked totally different than Rex's. I want that initial requester to just down and dirty, what do you want, when do you want it, and how many do you want? And you also, if you are using inventory and you want the ability to purchase it from inventory or to fulfill it from inventory rather than purchasing it, you want to keep your inventory volume and cost down as low as you can. And you want the capability to maybe auto-create purchase orders. Maybe you don't have a purchasing department. Maybe you want that purchase order automatically sent. So you need to increase your efficiency along with your business rules, your business processes. Make it as effective as possible. So let's go back one more time and take a look at some of the things that we talked about. So one thing I mentioned was mobile approval. So this is the mobile, or simulation of the mobile capability of ReQlogic. So I'm logging in as Andy Hobbs, who happens to be an approver in my demo system. And once I get in here as Andy Hobbs, you will see that Andy has a review queue. Now, Andy can also see his recent transactions, and you can enter expenses, and if you're using projects, you can enter time. But right now, we're talking about the review queue. So here's something that I've done previously that's been sent to Andy for approval. So he can approve this from his mobile device. He can type a comment, and he can go out and he can say approve. So he sees what it is. He can see attachments. He could see notes if they were there. He can also, approver can approve via a mobile device. So I talked about those email notifications. So when an approver is sent that initial document, you get a routing notification. So this is a template, and this is just a sample. You can design it however you want. It can have a hot link to your document. It is showing you what is on this requisition. It can also have attachments visible. You can see comments people have made, and you can just reply to this email, as I have done in this case, different template, same functionality, and you set up a keyword. It could be approve or reject. It can be yes or no, whatever you want it to be. So I get this email notification, I reply, and I type my code word, and I send it. ReQlogic recognizes that you have approved it or rejected it, and it will so note within the web-based version of ReQlogic. So this is a great way that people love to approve in addition to the mobile capability, because you have everything you need here. If you need to get to the document, you can get to the document, and it's as simple as replying and typing your code word. So that is the email approval. And of course, the third way that someone can approve is via the mobile device. So you want your system to be flexible enough that it's going to allow you the flexibility to adapt again to whatever those processes may be, and to those individual preferences. So if someone likes mobile or someone likes eval or someone wants to actually go into the product, then you have all those choices. And from within the product, you do have the capability to check or uncheck to approve or reject a line. Here's a little triangle that tells me, oh, this one is over budget. Talked about that previously. And I have an additional tab here called Approval Options. And I can type a comment, send a question to anyone in the system, and I talked about delegation when out of office. That's tied right here. I can delegate on the fly to any other user in the system, and I can also set my out of office to delegate to an alternate approver for a specific period of time. So those are some of the things. So let me log out now as Andy and log back in here for Rex. Those are some of the things that we talked about in the last slide. So if we go back to this requisition, you notice that it said it was not submitted yet. If I look at our routing tab, it tells me where it's going so far based upon the routing policy that is set up in the header of the document, and that can default to the user if you would like. The status tab is my audit trail. So this is telling me exactly where it is. So far it hasn't been submitted. It's just been created. It's just been updated. So if I go ahead and I submit this into the routing policy, it will now go out, and based upon that routing policy in the header, it will submit it into the approval process. Now it's telling me 3 lines are over budget based upon the GL code that defaulted in. So now you'll see 2 more steps, 3 more have been added. Document was submitted, the routing started, and now it's in Andy Hobbs' queue. So if I have already, I talked about the audit trail previously, and I've already created one here. There goes an email notification out to Andy in the upper right-hand corner telling him, oh, you have this document waiting for your approval. Now, reminder notifications, you set how often do you want to receive those reminder emails to let you know that you have X amount of documents waiting for your approval. So I previously did this requisition, and the purpose I did this was to show you that the status tab is my complete audit trail. So I flowed this document all the way through the process. Requisition to purchase order, through the approval to purchase order, to receiving, to invoicing, and finally paid that invoice. So if we take a look at the status tab for this particular requisition, we see it was approved from mobile by Andy. He made this comment. William typed a comment, and eventually it went to my purchasing department. In my demo system, I have a purchasing agent, and these POs were created. It was received in on these receipts. There's one down here. It was various receipts. It wasn't all received in at the same time. This was for 2 different vendors. So 2 vouchers, 2 invoices were entered to pay this. I could have had additional invoices to pay this because it came in on different receipts. And eventually it was paid. So it was paid with one check number because both these invoices were for the same vendor. So you see here on this screen is your audit trail. And that audit trail is visible whether you're in ReQlogic or you're in GP. So you want that tight integration into GP. So if I go back now to our presentation and advance to the next slide, we'll talk about that a little bit. So you want that real-time integration. It's a big, big time saver in various ways that we've already mentioned. So it's eliminating the double entry, saving time by editing GL accounts, a huge time waster with AP. Full visibility regardless of which system you access. Ensures accuracy when you're not synchronizing. You could create a new vendor in ReQlogic or GP. You can see it at the same time. So, and you have that full audit trail visible in both systems. So this slide shows some of those lookup windows. So if I had looked up in the GL account, I would have drilled into the GL chart of accounts. If you were using projects, you would drill into GP projects. If you're drilling into items, you can drill into the GP inventory tables if you save them, and you can drill into the vendors. And that synchronization, that is real-time integration, so reading and writing to the GP tables. So I'm doing a requisition. It's a new vendor. I don't have a vendor. I can start that process in ReQlogic, send it through a workflow to get everything that I need to establish a new vendor, whatever your process is, and then auto-create that vendor in the GP table, and it will immediately, within a matter of just refreshing the screen, be available to choose from ReQlogic. And then we have real-time integration. I talked about the audit trail being visible from GP. So this is the GP receiving transaction entry. A shipment invoice was created for a purchase order that had been received here on 11/74. Here's a copy of the audit trail. Under the option tab here on both these screens, we have ReQlogic attachments and routing. So you can see any attachment that was added in ReQlogic here from within GP. You can also, of course, see it from ReQlogic, and you see a copy of the audit trail. So those are going to a table that's common to both ReQlogic and GP. Same thing for purchase order. The minute that purchase order is created, it's written into the GP table, so you don't have to worry about that. I did show you the mobile access, and this just talks about efficiency, being able to access what you need to access anytime, anywhere. So the process, we focused mostly on purchasing today, but the process is such that the requisition is created, goes through the approval process, that PO is created, either auto-created, emailed, or HTML sent in the case of your punch out, or snail mailed if you want to. Any attachments can be sent along with it. Your PO is totally customizable, so you can adapt it to whatever your PO looks like today. And after the PO is created, either through purchasing or automatically, you can receive through ReQlogic. The benefit being that it is web-based, so you can receive from anywhere. You don't have to have a GP license. You can do it through ReQlogic. And then the final step, of course, is to match that invoice to that PO. And once you do that, the lines are automatically filled into that PO. So we, just as a little summary of what we covered today, you can adapt ReQlogic to your business processes through these various ways. Flexibility of our workflow, configuring your entry screens, adding up to 24 user-defined fields. You can configure your menus, your lookup tables. So sometimes, and many times, requesters don't know anything about GL codes. and they really don't need to know anything about GL codes. So we want to default those in. We can default in that GL code lookup for anyone based upon the code group. So for instance, most people who are entering they usually see only the expense categories, and you only want them to see the expense categories that are applicable to their department. So every time someone goes in and they purchase something, we can default that GL code to their department. I guess the biggest time waster that I hear constantly is the AP people who need to correct GL codes. And if it isn't correct when it goes over to GP or corrected before it gets posted, then we have the addition of a correcting journal entry, which is a whole nother time waster. So the more accurate you can make those GL codes, even if you're assigning them behind the scenes, the more time saving it is. And of course, budgets. A lot of companies don't have access to view their budgets today. And so the capability to be able to do that as you're approving, as it's going through the approval process, is very beneficial to many companies. So we talked mostly about requisitions, but the items that we mentioned and the improvements can also be attributed to the other functionality of ReQlogic. So we have invoices, we can do expense management, and of course we can do timesheet, time enter, but the time entry is only for companies that are utilizing projects. Now, as far as invoices are concerned, they can be invoices tied to purchase orders, in which case you will have a lookup for all outstanding purchase orders, and you can match the invoice to your purchase order, and all the line items are filled in that default from the purchase order. You can set a variance for receiving and for invoicing to ensure that your invoice is accurate, and reject if it's outside of that tolerance. So with that, I know I showed you a lot of information today, and your head may be spinning, so I will at this time open it up to questions.
So we don't have any right now. If you have them, remember you can put them in the question box. So there is a question. Is the integration still real-time with other Dynamics products, for example, NAV?
Yes, we are integrated to NAV, to AX, to GP, and to SL, so all 4 of the Dynamics ERP systems.
All right. We'll stay on for another minute or two to see if any questions come through. And just remember, you can reach out to Sue or your associate's account manager. They would definitely be willing to help you and answer any additional questions from today. So. Are there any current plans for ReQlogic to go to Dynamics 365 as well?
We are in the process of investigating a cloud solution. As of today, well, there's 2 flavors of Dynamics 365. There's the higher end version, which is based upon AX, and then there's the lower end version, which is based upon NAV. The lower end product only has GL, AR, and AP available today, so there would be nothing for us to integrate into at this point in time. There's no inventory. There's no purchasing capability. We are investigating now what that will mean to our product, whether it means we can convert some of our code, or do we need a whole new rewrite of our product. Once we do that, which should be finalized next week, we will have a better idea of where we're going. So we will be moving to the cloud. We will eventually probably integrate into Dynamics 365, but that's going to depend mostly on Microsoft and how easy they make it, I guess, for us to do that, because right now they're pretty restrictive and we need to follow their rules, which are very restrictive and will not allow the visibility of the custom fields that we have today and some of the other adaptability of our functionality.
Alrighty, and with that, I think we will give you all 5 minutes back in your day, but definitely reach out if you have any questions, and thank you for joining us today.